Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show. On this podcast, you'll learn from professional players, coaches, and executives from all over the world and see the court in a brand new way. And now, joining you courtside, your Gen Z host, John Hartofilis.
Hey, Dave, what's going on?
Hey, what's happening?
Good. I'm excited to have you on. I mean, I've spoken to a few people that have kind of worked in these outside leagues, and it's so interesting to learn about them. So I'm really looking forward to this episode and hearing what you have to say.
Well, fantastic. I saw that you have my good friend Audley Stevenson on from the NBL Canada recently, and he's done a great job, and he's a great guy.
Of course, that was a great episode, and I'm looking forward to this one as well. I think we'll have obviously a similar conversation, but still a great talk about just all these other professional leagues and how they're kind of further growing the game. So just to start off, can you kind of give us a quick little rundown on how you first got introduced to the game as a kid, whether it's through playing and then when you were as a young adult, like what did that look like for you in falling in love with basketball?
Well, I'm from Indiana, and in Indiana, there's not a lot of options. If you're an athlete, you're going to want to be a basketball player. I mean, it's of the 15 largest high school gyms in the world, 14 are in Indiana. So you've got it's nothing to play in front of 3,000-4,000 fans on a regular basis. And as a high school kid, so you grow up in the primary ages, dreaming of someday playing at that high school, not in the college or in the NBA. I just want to be a high school player. So I grew up in a wonderful hotbed of basketball in South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame is, and I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and my 2 older brothers were really good basketball players, and it just was something that I dreamt of doing. Probably, I've got a grandson in the 3rd grade. When I was in the 3rd grade, I played on the 6th grade team. And when we were kids, they didn't have individual age groups. You played at the highest level you could play at. So I started playing with older guys when I was really young.
That's great, and I was really curious about the whole thing about all the biggest gyms being in Indiana. I looked it up, and the list is pretty crazy. How it's just like 6 Indianas in a row. There's a team in Texas there, and then another 5, 6 Indianas in a row. That's crazy. That's insane to think about.
We're not a big state, and I believe what happened was, at back in the day, football, it was hard to field enough guys to play football back, 100 years ago. So everybody started really getting crazy about basketball. Well, we're a one-class state up until a few years ago. So that means that everybody plays against everybody. There's no 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. Everybody plays in one big group. So the bigger the gym that you built, the greater the odds were you would get to host the first round of the state tournament. Build it big enough, it could be the first 2 rounds. And build a really big one, it could be the first 3 rounds. So you can play the sectional, regional, and semi-state in your own gym. That's a pretty big advantage. That's kind of what drove those, I think.
Yep, and it's crazy to think about playing a high school game in front of. I saw one of them 8,000, 9,000 fans. It's pretty impressive.
The Newcastle gym seats 10,000, and really on that list, everybody's from 6,000, 6,500 to 10,000. It's pretty amazing. I mean, our team in our league in Kokomo will probably play in their Memorial Gym, which seats 6,600. It has jumbotrons. It's pretty darn nice, and that's just a high school gym in Indiana.
Of course. And that's why it's so great to have these conversations and learn about things that, knowing that, it's crazy to think that that's how different high school basketball is in other states, let alone basketball in other professional leagues in other countries, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And then just real quick, when you were at Kansas, I saw you had a standout career there and you being coached by a very well-known coach in Ted Owens. Like, what was is there any takeaways from that experience you'd like to share with us on what that did for you in terms of?
Yeah, I probably had the greatest career in Kansas history. I would take my career over Wilt Chamberlain or Danny Manning or any of those guys that were better players, more famous people, because I had the blessing of failure. I got to struggle when I first got there and not play much as a freshman and work really hard. And my coach, God love him, loved me enough to make me get better and would never give me anything. It was, I just had to work really hard. And so doing that earned me the right to play a little bit more. By the end of my freshman year, I was the 6th man. And then I started 20 games as a sophomore and averaged 4 or 5 points. And as a junior, I averaged about 10 points. And as a senior, I was one of the leading scorers and rebounders in the conference. so I got this great experience of really struggling and then getting through it and getting better and earning the right. And one of the harshest things that's the reality is that parents today, they don't want their kids to struggle, and they're robbing them of the blessing that is the struggle. And sometimes that is our blessing. It's not, there's a verse in the Bible, Romans 5:2-5 says, "We glory in tribulation, knowing that tribulation works patience." But it becomes a point that we got to glory in tribulation. Sometimes that blessing is in that thing we're struggling with, and that may be the blessing. And so for me, man, going through a tough freshman year was wonderful because I learned how to grow up as a man. And so the Kansas experience, as a freshman, I played against Magic Johnson when he won a championship. As a senior, I played against Michael Jordan his first game as a freshman in college. So, I got a great career. I got to play against a lot of great players, played in the field house, 17,000 fans. It is an amazing career, but I had to really earn it. And that was the great thing that Coach Owens gave me, was he didn't give me anything but a lot of love and encouragement and chastisement. And when I got there, he rewarded me. And he's become one of my best friends in life because of that.
I love that. The blessing that is the struggle. It's a great way to put it. And you're right. A lot of people really try to avoid that as much as they can, but that's the only way to grow. Pressure makes diamonds. Situations like that are what make you who you are today. So that's great.
Absolutely.
So of course, I mean, a fantastic playing career, but then eventually, after you hung them up, you've got into this the whole world of the business side of basketball. What did that transition look like for you in terms of going from playing to the business side? But then like what kind of sparked that for you?
It really was. It was playing to parenting, and parenting to business. Because I have 4 kids who are arguably better athletes than me. My oldest daughter won an NCAA championship in tennis in Florida. She's a Gator. And my second daughter is the second leading scorer and rebounder in Florida high school history. And she played at Rhode Island and Western Kentucky. And my oldest son played in the NCAA tournament at Western Kentucky and then transferred to Tulsa and played with Jordan Clarkson. And my youngest son played at a good school in Kansas City called Park College. So we got through with all 4 of our kids getting an education and for free. But I coached the boys at Braden Christian School. So the boys led me into basketball so I could coach them. It wasn't by design. We really went there so my second daughter could play at BCS for a really great coach named Jim Van Til who cared about where his girls were going, and Jessica became a great player there. And then their head coaching job became available, and they asked me would I want to be the coach, and I had a great time there. I was there 11 years, and we had 11 20-win seasons, 8 Elite Eights, 4 state finals. It was 27 guys went to college. It was awesome. And while I was there, one of my players was an IMG kid, a kid named Jamison Tipping, who could really play. And IMG is one of the best. That's actually why we moved to Florida, so my daughter could train at IMG with Nick Bollettieri. And then I started coaching a mile from there at Braden Christian. And Jamison wandered into our gym and with his father and wanted to see if he could play at BCS. And it worked out great. He went to Western Kentucky on a full scholarship, 6'7" white kid, could fly, could jump from the free throw line, dunk it. And his father asked me a couple of years after that, while my kids were just about through college, why don't you come up to Canada and help us do what you did at Braden Christian? Why don't you help us start a prep school? So they had already started a prep school called Athlete Institute Academy. And I got there and I worked with them for a little bit. And I don't get much credit for it because they were really good. Jesse Tipping, Jamison's older brother, was running it. And now it's arguably the best prep school in America, in North America. We had Jamal Murray, Thon Maker, Kyle Alexander, the left-handed kid Iggy from the Knicks. I mean, Lugens Dortz from Oklahoma City. They've got 5 or 6 guys from Canada that play in the NBA, all came through their prep school. While I was there, we got a chance to host an NBL Canada Combine. And while we were hosting the Combine, because again, there's not a lot of gyms in Canada, when we hosted that Combine, they said, why don't you guys buy a team? Well, I can't afford to buy a team, but the guy I was with sure could. And he said, if you'll run it, I'll buy it. So we started a team called the Brampton A's, and I ran it for a couple of years. And then I became the commissioner of that league. So I was the commissioner of that league before Audley was. And I was there for 2 years and Loved it. I loved Canada. Great place. NBL Canada was awesome. Great teams, great owners, great markets. Played in fabulous venues. They did a nice job. But I got my Marriott rewards in, and I had spent 340 nights in a hotel in 1 year. And I thought, Lord bless me with a smoking hot wife and 4 amazing kids and grandbabies that were just starting there, and now I've got 7 of them. I need to go home and get to enjoy the blessing that I have and stop kind of being away from everything. So I came back here, and we started this together basically. And my wife had the vision, and here we are 4 years later with 32 teams, about to go to 36 teams. And it's been a remarkable ride. And our model is different from the NBL Canada, but it's a model that has a chance to do really well.
Of course, and you touched on it just now with, of course, the expansion you guys have had, and it was a great kind of recount of all the different stops you've made along the basketball world and the lessons you've learned being there. And I also loved, the biggest thing I took away from that was when you spoke about how it went from playing to parenting, then to the business side of things. Most people would go into the specifics about how it's coaching, but you kind of saw it as parenting, and that's great to see, like, how you were able to raise such remarkable young kids that were able to become great athletes, but then also great people later on.
Well, I take great pride in the 27 guys we coached that went on to college in high school, and I take just as great a pride, if not more, in about the 30 or 40 kids that have gone into ministry from the school that we were at. We had a chance. The basketball program gives you such a unique advantage above parents, above teachers, because people are choosing to come play for us. It's a cool thing. I can help them get scholarships. So we spent an inordinate amount of time with those young men at Braden Christian. And like, we did team night every Friday night. And there would be parents in the school that would be going, why are you keeping these kids away from their classmates? And I'm going, okay, these kids are going to GT Bray Park doing things they shouldn't be doing. Or my guys are all going out for pizza, having fun and laughing and joking. And we're getting a chance to model healthy behavior for them. And you look at what our kids have become that went to BCS, and man, there's not one of them I'm not proud of. Even a couple that got in some trouble, they're all doing better today, and they've done great. So it was a great experience for coaching, because it was never about winning and losing. Actually, I've never coached to win or lose. When I coach, I always tell the kids, it's not about winning and losing. It's about how we compete and how we do what we're supposed to do. And when I say that, I lose the right to be angry with you when we lose. If you do everything I ask you to do, I promise you, I will not punish you. I will not be angry with you. Won't raise my voice. Won't call you out of your name. Won't curse if we lose, because that's part of it. Again, that's sometimes where the blessing is. You go out and lose a few games in a row, we'll figure it out. But not if I'm going to panic and I'm going to start treating them differently, because then you lose total credibility as a coach, that it really isn't about them as a man. It's about my ego, how I can win, and what's good for me. And that was never who I was. I may be the worst X's and O's coach you've ever met, because I just don't care. I only care about these guys. And I've won a lot of games, not because I'm that smart of a coach, it's because I love the kids. And whether that's in the pros or high school, it doesn't matter. I think that's a constant that everybody has to own up to.
Of course, and that's a great, and it's great because I've had so many guys come on here and say about how everyone focuses on the X's and O's, but coaching is just much more of a people thing, business, than it is about anything else, and how you relate to people and how you talk to them and how you get the best out of them. Not so much the best play you can draw out of a timeout, but how you make them feel and how you make them want to play for you.
Well, it's when I had a great senior year at Kansas, and everybody goes, man, it's remarkable how much better you got. I got better, but I also didn't come out. I played 39 minutes a game. So every time out of 40. So every time I make a mistake, I wasn't looking over my shoulder wondering who's at the scorer's table for me. My first few years, I played ahead of some pretty good players that were always ready to take my place. My senior year, I had created a little distance between me and everybody else. And it was amazing how much better I played. And I realized as a coach, if these kids know their rotation, I'm going to play 4 minutes, 6 minutes. It doesn't matter what you do. You make 3 threes in a row, maybe I'll give you 30 extra seconds. But you're still coming out. But you make mistakes, you're not coming out either. You're playing so you make 2 turnovers the first minute of the game, I'm not pulling you out. You're playing your 6 minutes. Play through it. It's just a game. Go out and have fun. It's just a game. And when they get a hold of that, you can relax and play. They're the ones that got to put that ball in the hole, not my plays. They're the ones that got to be able to defend and be encouraged and encourage one another. Not any great motivational speech I'm going to give them. It's really, can they honestly understand what's going on? And I've seen, like I said, I know some people that have far better minds than I do about the game of basketball that have never had winning seasons. And they say, well, I don't have the best talent, or I don't have the most money to spend. Maybe. Or maybe you just care about winning too much and you're not willing to lose. And if you're okay with losing, you're going to win. I mean, it's just the way it's a pretty simple formula for me, and it's worked pretty well.
That's great. It definitely has worked pretty well. The results are there, and the proof is there in what you've been able to do so far. And the one thing that really jumped out to me, especially, was the growth of the TBL during a time when not a lot of growth is happening with businesses. Maybe new ideas, or people are having new ideas, but to execute them and create new opportunities by starting new teams. I mean, that's really impressive. How have you guys gone about doing that recently, and it's like kind of growing that idea of TBL?
Well, it's no great secret that most of our teams are on payment plans. That's how they pay for their market rights. And the reality is that when COVID hit, they couldn't have any money coming in from their gate, from their sponsorships, from anything, because their source of revenue dried up because we had to shut the season down. But it's also the secondary income for them because their primary business all got hurt too. So I could sit here and go, okay, where's all the money we're going to need to run the league, and freak out and panic, or we prayed about it. We just felt led that maybe, rather than running in fear and waiting to see what the NBA did, and waiting to see what the NCAA is, and waiting to see what the election looks like, and all these variables that every day there's another drama and they may or may not play, maybe we should just put our head down and just grow. And we took the extra time that we had because the season was shortened to start looking at it. And we were fortunate. Our first team came into Syracuse Stallions. And at that point, I believe we had people's attention there because they're going, wait a minute, they just shut down. How's that working? And then next thing you know, the Anderson Aces says, well, is there still opportunities? I see you just added a new team. Actually, there is. And it just started blossoming. Well, the thing about that is that 32 to 36 teams, we get to scale. Now, in business, the term scale means if I'm a door manufacturer and I need 1,000 doors a day to break even for my manufacturing plant, that's my scale. Anything above that, I make good money. The first 1,000 is just what we need to do to keep lights on, pay the employees, and workman's comp and all that stuff. Well, our scale is about 32 to 36 teams. And the reason is that if all of a sudden we have pods of 4 to 6 teams, now our travel schedule, our math makes sense, where we virtually have very few teams that are going to have to buy airplane tickets this year. Many teams won't do. You look in the Midwest, we won't have many teams that even do overnights. You can go from Kokomo to Anderson in 45 minutes. Both those cities to Indianapolis in 45 minutes. But all three of those cities to Dayton, Ohio in less than 2 hours. To Owensboro, Kentucky in less than 3.5 hours. Columbus, Ohio in less than 3.5, 4 hours. Detroit, 4 hours. So you look at these markets that have come together, and it's taken our travel budget from a high of 90,000 a few years when we first started down to 10, 15,000. Now the economics of the business model is starting to make a lot of sense for our business owners. So our team market owners are excited by that. So, we've got something that the fast growth has gotten there. Now that we've created the demand, we're going to slow down the availability. So come January 1, we're only going to let a few teams come in next year. We're going to probably have 4 to 6 teams come in a year for the next 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years, and then just increase the price of the teams, which, again, business 101 drives your revenue up, but it also makes the valuation of the teams worth a lot more for each team. So there's a lot of thought that's going into this, and it's been coming together really nice.
Definitely, and all those ideas are super smart. And I mean, this is one of the first conversations I've had where it's been so business oriented. And I mean, I'm being super interested in this business stuff. I'm gonna have to listen to this a few times over to make sure I understand everything and take notes, because it all makes so much sense. And then I kind of was getting super caught up in it. That was great stuff. And I'm really excited about that.
The other big piece that makes us really unique, you've got coronavirus hits and we double down, and then George Floyd gets killed and the protests happen and the Black Lives Matter and all that. Well, a lot of our teams are owned by team market owners that are African American. Our coaches are African American. Most of our players are African American. We become, because our focus is on community, we become a solution. We become a solution that we can get in the community and get engaged and be that thing that companies want to get behind, because they go, hey, we want to show that we support this community. Let's support this local team. Let's support what they're doing. Now, our guys have to be real. They've got to get in the community. They got to work at the Boys and Girls Clubs. They got to work with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. They've got to work with the local ministries and be in the schools and be really active. But if and when we do that, we become very relevant. So, it's the vision that my wife has as the first female African American. I always say, my wife's not special because she's a Black woman. She's smoking hot now. Don't get me wrong. I'm pretty fortunate she's my wife, but that doesn't make her special. Being a Black mother does. She's got an understanding and awareness of what these young men go through that someone that even like me can't fully understand. Now, I know more about being Black than any white person you know, because I've been married to a Black person for 40 years. My kids are all considered Black, but I've never been Black a day in my life. So when I walk in a store, I never consider anybody watching me that they're thinking I might steal something. My kids do. When a siren goes off, my heart doesn't pump because I wonder what they're stopping me for. I think, man, did I drive through a stop sign? Am I driving too fast? That's all I think about. If I walk by a car, a woman doesn't lock her door up just because of the color of my skin. But my children have experienced that. My wife has experienced it, and almost all of our players have. So we have a different vantage point. We're not looking through my eyes. We're looking through her eyes. And through her eyes, it's how do we help treat these guys the right way, and how do we teach them how to serve the community? Then back to my eyes, the business part goes, and then how do we monetize that? Because if we're doing the right things, people want their brand on. They don't want their brand on our jerseys. They want them on our polo shirts, because those polo shirts go in the community, and you want to be a part of what we do because we're going to give back. And business people love that.
Of course, and giving back is so important, and TBL is doing such a great job of that. What do you kind of see as, I mean, you obviously touched on how having to, now you've grown the league to such a point that you've hit a maximum of teams and all of that, but what are kind of 5 years from now, 10 years from now, those big lofty goals of where you could see the TBL being?
I think what you'll see is we're going to probably be around 48 to 64 teams ultimately, which will put us double the size of the NBA. We'll never be the NBA in pay, or never be but we can be a footprint, which means, people that want regional representation and sponsorships, they can get supported. Every market, there's hundreds of markets that this fit in North America, Canada, Canada, US, Mexico. They're all markets that you can do things with. So that's number one. But then the next move is maybe creating a women's league, a TWBL, that plays at the same time as the WNBA. So we can be a feeder program for them, because there's not a good feeder program today. There's probably a TBL2 coming, which is a development league to the TBL, because there's, there's so many young men. We have an unlimited, literally limitless resources for talent in North America, Canada, America. The best talent in the world is in North America. That's just a fact. There's more NBA players from Canada than any other country in the world besides the US. So they're developing a lot of great talent up there as well as here. And we, even with 32 teams, that's 388 players, we'll still leave 500 players on the ground that can't get into our league. So there's a time coming when we'll do a development league that will develop players to get into our league. And so there's just a massive, we like the basketball league brand to be known as that mid-level pro basketball league. That's, if we were in Europe, we would be called Pro B. If we were baseball, we would be double A, and then TBL2 would be single A. So there's leagues like us in different sports. We're just trying to do it in a manner that's professional, that has standards, that really everybody wins. That our team market owners win, our players win, our fans win, the communities win. And in doing that, there'll be a win for us at some point.
Of course. And and all that, to think of how much you've already grown, but even though you've grown so much, how much more room there is to grow is pretty remarkable. I'm really excited to see it. I spoke about this with Ollie when we were talking about the NBL, about how everyone always talks about the 1980s and Bird and Magic and Jordan completely, growing the game, and how the finals were on tape delay and all this growth happened in the league. And I obviously wasn't around to witness that and experience that. And it sounds super interesting. But now in the present day, I'm able to watch that with leagues like TBL and see the post on LinkedIn you made about how you've added team number, however many it was, 28, 29, 30 at the time. And that stuff's pretty incredible to just watch grow as it's happening. So that's great.
Well, it's funny because I played at those eras. When I played in the NBA was those Magic, Bird, Jordan eras, and quiet as it's kept, the single biggest advent that grew that league, Magic and Larry and Doc all helped save the league because they were struggling. But the advent of cable television, think about that. When I'm a rookie in Cleveland, the head of the Players Association was a guy named Larry Fleischer, and he met with us and he said, let's hold out for a piece of the team's profits. And we're going, okay, Portland makes money and the Knicks make money. No one else makes money. What are we holding out for? That doesn't make any sense. They said, this thing, cable television, is about to explode. Think about it. Football doesn't play that many games, and they're all covered up and they're outside. Baseball plays a ton of games, but it's in the summertime when people don't want to be in. The angles are tough to watch. It's a really slow game. It's hard to watch. Hockey is fast, but they're covered up, but you can't see the puck. It's really hard to translate. But basketball, you're next to naked. Everybody gets to see you. It's a fast game with a lot of scoring. We believe pro basketball on cable television is going to be, and ironically, at the same time, here comes Michael Jordan. So one of the most exciting players that ever played comes in at the very same time that this cable television vehicle is out there. I don't know what it would have been like to have every highlight that Dr. J had on film. It might be pretty darn incredible. There was Connie Hawkins and Elgin Baylor, some old-time guys that might have been Michael Jordan-esque, but we didn't capture every image of what they did. So Michael hit it at the right time. It was a great image, great smile. Nike doubled down, invested everything in him, and the rest is pro sports history. We look at it the same way. The opportunity is now. We don't think that there's something, again, in our faith, there's something called providential grace, that we believe that sometimes things just happen for a reason. And if you embrace it, great things can come. And we've embraced every little thing that's happened in our society and to happen to us as a league. And we're excited that we think that the blessings are coming and the people that are investing, and it's going to be a good thing for the young men and the players and the coaches and the owners, and all that stuff all works together.
Of course. And kind of on how you touched on how the vehicle back in the 80s was cable television, and no one really realized that it was coming until it did. And there were rumblings about it, but it never really happened. What do you kind of see as being that vehicle now? Because the internet's been around for a while, but social media's also been on the rise for years. But there's also so many new advancements, such as whether it's VR, stuff like that are really going to take shape over the next 5 to 10 years. What do you see being that vehicle for TBL?
Well, I don't think it's there yet. I think we have one that's really cool. We partner with a company called Sportscaster. And Sportscaster is CASTR, is how you spell it, Sportscaster. It was funded initially by David Stern in the NBA, by Jim Boeheim's got some support in it, Billy Owens from a lot of Syracuse guys. And what makes them unique, they do our live streaming. But what makes them really cool is you can do any play-by-play you want to of any game. So you decide, well, I want to do some play-by-play. You just download the Sportscaster app, and then all of a sudden you show up on a green screen and you're doing the actual game. Well, where that changes our world is you might have 10,000 followers that follow you that would know nothing about TBL. But if you're doing the games, they're going to watch what you do. And next thing you know, so our literally, we grew over 1,000% with our live streaming last year because of Sportscaster, because they have, and it's not people messing around. They're legitimately taking broadcasting seriously. So each team has their own broadcasting crew, and you can watch that broadcasting crew, but you can click up in the corner, like on this Zoom call, And it will then say, which one would you like to watch? And you can watch your friends doing it. And it really is a cool technology. Well, that's going to become a social media as well. So people follow them and they all communicate. So it's a whole nother level. It's like they've got Comic Con for comic books. I think there could be Sportscaster Con one day where there's everybody's coming around that. And we're big supporters of what they do. So we think that, but to your point, augmented reality, virtual reality, cool things are happening. New video games with our guys could be coming on the horizon. So there's a lot of technology that's coming that could be pretty cool.
Super exciting to think about, and I can't wait for 10 years from now when I'm 30 instead of being 20 and kind of new to this whole basketball world. And I listen back to this episode, I'm like, oh wow, like Sportscaster did blow up, or virtual reality did kind of take the world by storm. And it's something I want to look into Sportscaster after this episode, because it sounds like a pretty cool technology that I would just have fun.
Oh, you would. It really
so,
is, and it's a blast because again, some of these guys, like they've got a guy that does post game wrap ups on the Knicks after every game. And it's because the group was originally ones that did podcasts, with just they were just audio. And again, podcast is very social. People follow the podcast. So they have the video component, and then they figured out how you could do it on games. It was really cool. So when we got with them, it just blows up. But the guy that does the Knicks games, he might have 10,000 followers after the Knicks games listening to him go on and give a review. And with the Knicks, there's a lot of negative reviews sometimes, but there's a lot of people love them. So he goes on and talks, and it's pretty cool. But it's I think that who knows, in 10 years you might be sitting in my chair running TBL and going, wow, I can't believe I got in the league and it's this big. You never know.
We'll never know. And the first thing I want to say is, as a native New Yorker, thank you for just touching on the Knicks, but not going into detail about some of their hardships. So thank you for just kind of glossing over that. I appreciate it. I really appreciate that.
Well, it's funny because I played for Phil Jackson in the CBA, and he was a great Knicks player, and he went back as the president of the Knicks, a couple years ago, and it's a tough environment. It's a tough environment to make change in because you've got a pretty active owner there that has a little too much control. Probably it's nobody really knows who owns the Spurs much. They don't talk about. I don't know if Brad McComb still owns it, if he's even still alive, but. These really good teams, you don't know the owners that much. The R.C. Bufords and the Popoviches and those guys, because they've been there for 20 years and they build a consistency. Mike Woodson was doing a nice job coaching the Knicks. They should have never got rid of Mike Woodson. So what, he had a year that was off, but he had 3 or 4 pretty good years. They got to the playoffs. I always blows my mind how quickly, like in football, Tampa Bay got rid of Tony Dungy because he couldn't win a Super Bowl. But he had gotten them to the AFC or NFC finals 2 or 3 years in a row. They were winning. They were doing great things after never having a winning season. And they bring in Gruden and they win a Super Bowl and they go, see, it was that. But Gruden never takes them back to a second Super Bowl. But Dungy goes to Indianapolis and does the same thing for them and wins the Super Bowl. So it's like, I think sometimes Marty Schottenheimer was a football coach that everywhere he went, all he did was get to the round just before the Super Bowl, and people would say, well, that's not good enough. Kansas City fires him, Cleveland fires him, Washington fires him. But no one's been any good since he left because he was the one constant that had people win. And I think that's if I had a critique on the Knicks, they've got to determine a direction to go and just stick with it and build it out, because man, you just can't keep changing coaches and expect anybody to win.
Whether it's dynasties or just consistency in the NBA, it's all built on that and changing.
I think so.
Coaches, yeah, it's never a recipe for success. It's always a recipe. It's always when you're really when you stick to, you have a culture, you set that in place, and you follow that for more.
Well, imagine when I played for Cleveland, our owner made so many changes that eventually the NBA had to step in and say, you cannot make any more coaching changes or ownership or player moves without the NBA's approval. Because he was just running the team in the ground, because he was watching George Steinbrenner with the Yankees, and he thought that was really cool to play with this, but you could never build any consistency. And, you know, you look at these teams that have done it and they've done just a great job, and they win and they win and they win.
I was curious when you brought up the thing about playing for Phil Jackson in the CBL. Was that that was the league that they showed in the Jordan documentary, right? When they were throwing
I
stuff on
was
the
on the
yep.
team.
Wow,
I was
that's
on
awesome.
they had Charlie Rosen speaking, and he was our assistant coach. Yeah,
Okay, that's yeah.
it was, you know, it's funny. Nobody wants to go from, you know, major to minor. So you don't want to go from the NBA to the CBA, which is exactly what I did. But you know, in honesty, we probably outdrew the Cavs in Albany, and we were a big deal in Albany. So if you got to play at any level, the minor league mecca of Albany, New York, was the best. I mean, that Washington Avenue arm where you walk in there, you feel like, you know, Sugar Ray Robinson should be fighting Jake LaMotta with smoke billowing above you and beer on the floor, because it feels like a 1950s prize fight when you walk in there. It's just a really cool old building. And you know, Phil walks in with his quirky ways and his unique philosophies. And actually, a lot of my substitution patterns and the things that I became as a coach, I took from Phil, because he'd let you play, but he wouldn't let you play too long if you were going to get sub. It was coming. Don't take it personal, and it lets you play as hard as you can play. We didn't have any Michael Jordan, so you know he just rotated guys, and we won the CBA championship that year.
And then do you have anything? I mean, I remember I'm trying to piece it together from the documentary about the chickens and all the stuff going on over there in the CBA, all that weird stuff.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
CBA was. There's a movie by Brendan Casey did from Uptown Collective in Albany called The Minor League Mecca, and you should try to get it and find it. It's a great movie. It's about the 10-year documentary of the first 10 years of Patroons, and it's everything from Phil Jackson, George Karl, Bill Musselman, three NBA head coaches that were coaching there at different times, and just the quirkiness of everybody there. You know, trips to Puerto Rico, and just, you know, driving with Phil to Toronto from Albany with, you know, 9 guys that are 6'7" or bigger in a van that none of us fit in, and the wipers aren't working and the snowstorm's coming, and Phil is reading a crossword puzzle while he's driving. It's just a crazy time to do that. And you know, Phil's pretty spacey out there having fun, and it was something that, you know, you're kind of glad you lived through it, but the memories are a pretty remarkable place to be at that time. It was wild, wild west for sure.
Definitely some great stories with that. And just to wrap up, one last question. What's some advice that you'd give to a 20-year-old David Magley, whether it's just coming out of college, maybe in the midst of your pro career, when you're making that transition from playing to parenting to coaching, that you know now after all these experiences and all the time that's passed, that you kind of didn't know at the time? What's some advice you'd give to yourself?
Don't make too many hard plans. Be flexible. Go with the flow. Chase opportunities. If things don't work, it's okay. If they do work, it's okay. You know, all of that stuff. Don't be so intent in, oh my God, I thought I was going to take this job and this job was going to lead to that job and I was going to be. Now, sometimes it might be a whole different direction. And it's kind of like let go and let God. If you just let go of that stuff and be the best you can be, greatness comes. I mean, I've been fired 12 times in my life. Almost all of them have been as a sales position that I sold too many things and made too much money. So you could give me a compensation plan. I'm supposed to make $70,000 or $80,000. I'm making $200,000 or $300,000, and they're going, we could hire 4 guys for that. Let's get rid of this guy and hire 4 people. But they can't, because they can't do what I do. So I go to get another job, and I can't ever get upset or anxious or worry about that, because then that just means that wasn't the right fit. And so you take the lessons you learn, you go on to the next thing, and you just keep building. And as long as you treat people the right way, there always seems to be a reason for that. You know, I believe if there's 2 tons of poo in my backyard, I'm looking for the pony. I don't think there's a septic backup. I think that there's something good that's coming. And too many times young people miss that. They're so anxious about where they have to be, when they have to be there. And I think they pass through life so fast that they miss the blessing that life is, if that makes any sense.
Of course, it definitely does, and that idea of detours are okay, and that's just a part of life is really important for some people to realize, because sometimes we forget about that, and it's always great to kind of center ourselves in that. So, David, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, this episode was fantastic. I learned so much about both outside leagues and the way it just kind of the business behind basketball, especially, that I didn't know before. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate what you do. You do a wonderful job. This is a very highly produced product. I mean, I went and watched the one that you did with Audley, and I thought it was really done well. And so I applaud you, because again, you're 20 years old and you're not afraid to try something. That's the other big secret, is taking chances, man. Taking chances, because failure is okay. And if failure is okay, why won't I try?
Great. No, beautiful. And that's exactly what you said about TBL. You just went out and did it, which is great. So, yep. Thank you. We'll hopefully talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.